So today we're going to discuss a topic about protesting versus rioting. I'd just like to get you guys' honest opinions and views on it and discuss whether or not it's right or wrong. So first we're going to talk about what's happened recently in the news. Obviously there's been mass protests over the death of George Floyd as well as other young black people who have been killed by police or who have faced police brutality. And obviously that's turned into rioting and looting. So the first question I'd like to ask you is whether or not you think rioting and looting is justified, or whether or not you think it takes us backwards, and it takes the Black Lives Matter movement backwards.
I would say that I suppose it would take the movement backwards only because the media is gonna do whatever the media does with it. Of course, rioting and looting, I don't think it's the most effective way. I think that it's obviously expression of our frustration and anger towards, our brothers and sisters that are getting slaughtered. But in terms of like how we move forward and how we're gonna sort of progress, it doesn't really do anything, and that's the reality of it. And also, it's gonna make the media just have a field day with whatever it is and sort of discredit whatever we're trying to do. So I suppose in that sense, it doesn't really, it's just not as effective.
Cool. Anyone else like to
Yeah.
comment on that?
Yeah, I agree as well. To be honest, it isn't, as you said, like with the media, it just kind of, they'll find anything to kind of like go against the movement or to criminalize like the movement and what we're actually trying to achieve. So in terms of that, I don't think it really, it really makes a good, it doesn't add something good to the movement, but at the same time it's how some people want to express their frustration. But then it gets kind of confusing when people who are not necessarily supporting the Black Lives Matter movement come and riot and loot as well, just for the sake of it. And then that's when everything starts getting worse. And even some people might try to cover up their tracks. Like I've seen in America, lots of videos of police officers breaking buildings and looting shops and stuff like that. So it looks like you're doing it when you're not the people doing it. So yeah, in terms of that, I do think it's not as effective, but to an extent I understand why some people do it, but I don't necessarily agree with it personally.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Like, I feel like even if all of them were peaceful, there would still be some type of narrative in the news about like how his bag or shining any negative light that it can on it.
Yeah.
So obviously rioting's probably not going to help us in the long run, but I feel like no matter what happens, there's still going to be negativity surrounding it.
Yeah,
it's kind of difficult.
So like, I don't condone violence, but straight after the riots happened in Minnesota, the police officers were arrested. Because when it was peaceful protest in the beginning, like all the police officers were guarding, well, not all of them, majority of the police officers from Minneapolis were guarding like at least 3,000, if not more, the police officer who initially knelt on George Floyd's neck. So when they started getting violent, because the police were violent to them first, that's when the government did something. That's when like the governor of Minnesota decided, we need to actually arrest these people. And when the violence did not stop is when they arrested the other 3 that were also involved in the killing. So I understand, like, to an extent. I don't support the destruction of like property. Like obviously there's corporations, they've got like $1 billion insurance, but like the mom and dad generation, and especially because like Minneapolis is a very diverse area, like they were targeting, like it was people from their own community targeting like cafes and like shops and like mini museums and stuff like that. So I didn't understand that. Like if you're trying to get back at like the government and the police, why attack?
Go for the big call.
Like target
I would
target written letter saying we don't care because we can afford to fix our stores and stuff, but those other shops aren't. So like I understand like protesting works because like
You know, when people start boycotting and protesting back in the civil rights movement, shit worked, you know. But sometimes, like Martin Luther King said,
you need that
writing
element
is a language of the unheard, like you mentioned yesterday. So you know, sometimes you have to, I don't condone violence, but sometimes you have to use the language that they understand and that they know. They use violence against sometimes it has to be reversed. I don't want like an all out like race war or whatever the hell the media is trying to like push at people. That's something that I 100% do not condone. But the burning down of the police station, like that got
we can have that.
people, you know, that got people's blood boiling, and like the police quickly did something. They arrested their own, which is something that they never do. And like they also raised the degree to second degree murder, which it was. Hopefully they don't raise it to first degree, because that means he's gonna win straight away. But like the fact that they raised it to second degree, it shows that like they heard the people, and they like, you know, that because we outnumber them, we gave them the power. They're public servants. So if we take their power from them, who are they? You know, they're nothing. They're just like everybody else.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's what reminded them during like the protests and the riots of Minneapolis, because it was the police that invoked the violence. It's the police that always do this. People are peacefully protesting in Chicago. They got shot. They got rubber bullets shot in their heads. Washington D.C. Like so many people are blinded. Like they shot rubber. It's not even. They call it non-lethal. It's gun. Like it's actual bullets inside, covered in like a thin layer of plastic. That doesn't mean it's not, you know, non-lethal. Like they're macing children. Like, have you seen the video of that like 4-year-old girl with his face? And like I've seen loads of those videos, and then they're just smirking because they don't care. And then they're saying to people, we don't care about your Second Amendment, we don't care about your First Amendment, we don't care, because they're allowing these white right-winged, you know, neo-Nazis to walk around with rifles and other shotguns. And when protesters are carrying guns to protect themselves from these people who are provoking like riots, and as you mentioned, they're the ones who are looting and destroying buildings and blaming the Black Lives Matter and protesters, they get arrested. Like 6 men got arrested for carrying, and they legally own those guns. So it wasn't like that. They just they had their, you know, their amendment. Was it Second Amendment for the rights to hold weapons? So they legally own those guns, and then they got arrested by the police officers, and like they're on court cases in 2 weeks or something like that. But they're still like obviously in jail. So I don't understand that. And then the police turned away people who deliberately ran their cars into protesters, killing people, shooting people, and they let them go away. So I feel like in those circumstances, rioting is natural. You know, we're humans. You know, if somebody attacks you, we've been taught by our parents to fight back. If somebody hits you, you hit them 10 times harder. So if people are shooting at you, running you over, like I understand that, but I don't want it to spiral out of control and become like a race war, and you know, or like non-racist against racist, or black against white, or black against non-blacks. I don't want stuff like that. I just want a society where those racist people who are harming people and starting, and like you mentioned, who are creating destruction for the government and for the law to hold them accountable, and instead of the media blaming Black Lives Matter, because Black Lives Matter is not a Marxist group like the UK is claiming.
No.
They're not some left-wing terrorist group. They're a group of Black people who are tired of Black people being killed by the police officers, tired of institutional racism, systemic racism, and that's where the movement came from. Like the movement was made by 3 Black women in America. I believe 2 of them were queer as well. I don't know. That's I believe they identified themselves. So it also like shows the fact that, you know, we've had enough. Like we've created this movement not for war, not for violence, not just for a peaceful way for us to get equality. That's all we want. Like people, the media is acting like we want revenge. We don't want revenge. Black people are not. Black people are not violent.
You're lucky
people.
we don't want revenge, man.
Exactly. Black people have taken so much shit over the years, and we've gotten back up. We've dusted ourselves off. We've tried to help people. We've forgiven people, and then the same people are not all of them, because not all white people are racist. Like I've seen so many white people in the protests, signing petitions, donating. So I know not a lot of people, but at the same time there is, a certain demographic there are. And like that demographic is throwing the, forgiveness back in black people's faces. They're like, you should forget about slavery. Slavery wasn't that long ago. There's people whose great grandparents were born as slaves, that's not that long ago. Our grandparents and parents and whatever grew up in colonization, that was basically slavery. Till this day, there's still countries paying colonial tax to France, for decolonizing themselves. And then there's also countries, obviously Congo should be the richest country in the world. We already know that, because they have the most minerals, they have the most natural resources in the world, diamonds, gold, whatever. And the stuff that they make up from our phones and our computers and everything, I think it's called cobalt. It's made from that. And they use child slavery. Apple, Samsung, Microsoft, so many people.
Kids are losing limbs.
And then they get sued, and then they pay off the money. But who's the money going to? It's not going to the children and the parents who have lost their children. And it's going to continue because they're $1 trillion businesses, and like they're multinational businesses, so they don't pay tax anywhere. No one can hold them accountable, and they just continue. So this is what we also mean by institutional racism. Like businesses, education places, like everywhere, it's just too much. Sorry, I went off on a rant.
It's all right. I totally resonate with what you're saying, though, especially
it's true.
with what you said, like at the beginning, like in the matter of like, even though yes, we don't condone violence, but we do need to be loud in what we do. If I'm not mistaken, like 2-3 weeks before the George Floyd death, there was a protest about from majority of white Americans protesting that they don't want to what's it called, stay indoors anymore. It's against their First Amendment right. And they went to the town hall. They went to the town hall holding guns, like rifle guns, nothing, shouting in police officers' faces.
I just want to jump in about that. Do you know what's so funny? Was it the 70s when the Black Panther movement stormed the Californian state capital with guns, and that's why California also has the strictest gun laws in the whole of America, because they got scared that black people were arming themselves against the police. So it's funny how the government doesn't do the same thing in those states like Michigan and Washington and all those other places where they stormed the state capitals. Nothing was done. So continue that. I just want that.
It's crazy, but so it kind of goes to show, like, because they can be loud when they want to be, when they believe that they're fighting for something important, they can be loud. So sometimes we have to be louder, and sometimes protesting doesn't do that. I think with like this time it helped because you really did have unity from around like the whole world. Like the whole world was protesting with America, but still to have like proper effect. I get why people was like, nah, like fuck that, like excuse my language, like forget it, like protesting's not gonna do anything. We need to show them that they can make noise, but we can make noise too. So I totally agree with what you were saying.
And not only that, I feel like protesting and all the riots and stuff, it shines a light on who's heard, and it shines a light, especially in America. Like the First Amendment is freedom of speech, and no one is listening. Look how many people are out on the streets. Like even the riot, they had a riot in DC, and then they switched off their internet service. Like no one could communicate for about 6-7 hours. Like, so it's clear, like, people are speaking up. Everyone's speaking up. The whole 50 states were protesting, but no one's being listened to. So it's not really, like, the First Amendment doesn't really exist. It's just there. But they're not going to be heard.
Yeah.
Only there to serve, like, the purpose they want to have it served. So, like, what you're talking about, like, even when we do things where it's like everyone is finally, like, actually getting the time to put their attention on this one thing that we've been saying and chatting about like for ages, it's like they try and shut it down somehow. And then and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, coincidence that servers went down. Like, are you sure though? Because like we know what it is. This rubbish all our lives. It's like whenever you try and do something, some way to deflect what we're trying to say, or bring different attention to something else, and like it's just like you can like. And what Israa was saying about like Congo and all the minerals and phones and things, that's where you see like capitalism like also contributing to racism. I suppose like they kind of just feed into each other, because it's like racism is seeped into everything, that even though like it's not like capitalism is like the worst thing in the world, because at the end of the day, like you kind of want to get back what you've worked for, right?
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, it's like when racism is then added with that, it's then people getting exploited, and it's no longer a situation where people are getting what they're meant to get or what they're due. So like that's a really sad thing. And also when we'll talk about like speaking their language, it's so true in that like they only listen when you're hurting their pockets. Like that's where you get like with the rioting, they're going off these big corporations. People don't like it, innit? Because they're hurting their pockets. So even when like in the civil rights movement, where the bus boycotts and stuff like that. So Martin Luther King, I think it's been circulating in the net, like how they boycotted buses for 381 days. And I'm like, fam, if we could do something like that would be sick. Like there was one in Bristol. Because obviously we had our own movement. There was one in Bristol, and that was a boycott, and things were changed through that, or perceptions were changed. It brought more awareness to the issue of racism. But I feel like we just need to do more. I think when it comes to like protesting, it's good because, like we said, a lot of people come out and it's showing it, and then rioting is showing that okay, like we're angry. But I think we need to start organizing. That's my thing, is that like at the end of the day, like at some point the protesters are going to stop. What are we going to do after that? Like there needs to be some organization of what we believe in, what our aims are as Black people, what we're trying to achieve, and how we're going to do that. If that means boycotting, we're boycotting. Do you know what I mean? Like if that means like we're not buying from this business, we're starting to buy from Black businesses, let's start doing that. If you know what I mean? If that means we've got to stop taking TFL, it's peak in it. But like people that were elderly that were doing the bus boycott with Martin Luther King, like they didn't have shoes to walk on, but they still went to where they needed to go without shoes. Like people were walking barefoot, like even though they were poor. And like it's about being strong in what you believe in, and knowing that at some point they're gonna have to crack. If we all decide, for even if it takes like 5 years to do something, if we all decide that we're not gonna do something, at some point they're gonna have to give it to us. And best believe during that time they're going to start putting things in to try and deflect it. Like with the servers, they're going to be doing things like shutting down businesses and stopping people importing stuff when like the businesses are going really, really well for us. But if we continue to stick with it and don't give up, they're going to have to change it. But obviously it's going to be a fight, innit? And it's about who's willing to be consistent with it, and who's willing to actually keep the faith, kind of thing. So
and I think like within our people as well, like I think there's a lot of people that just doesn't believe like in the strength of the movement. I don't think a lot of people realize the power of like the Black coin. Like the money that we spend is very powerful all over the world. This is why companies are apologizing the next day when one of their staff or something is done wrong. Sorry, Taco Bell. Oh, sorry. This. It's because they realize if they lose,
Starbucks as well.
They're losing so much. So I think people just need to have faith, like that we actually do have power in this world. We're not weak like they tell us that we are. Like we have a lot of strength in this world, and if we actually come together and really be united in what we say we're going to do, then we're going to actually achieve something.
There's this thing called Black Pound Day. Sorry, the ice cream truck is just chilling. Oh my god! There's this thing called Black Pound Day, and I believe it's on is it next week? I think. Yeah, it's Saturday the 26th or 7th. I don't know when it is, but it's a Saturday, and someone was trying to start a movement. I don't know if it's spread like wild yet, but basically they were saying for that day we should start basically buying from Black businesses. And I think that's something that we could really, like, because like fam, if we all got behind it, it would actually bang. Like, it would actually bang.
Yeah, it really would.
And I'm not saying that again, like, they'll try and deflect the whole movement, and they'll try and put things in place where, you know, like, they'll come up with some trash law to try and, you know, break it all up. Like, I can foretell that happening if we try and do it. But if we all decided to actually put in our best efforts to do that, then it would bang. And I think that, again, like I was saying, comes with organization. Like, if we as like people united under like one like organization, because then we can kind of get messages way quicker. Do you know what I mean? Because like, I feel like right now people are like posting things, and if you happen to get a post where it's saying we're protesting this day, then you might end up coming to the protest. But like, some people might not catch it. So it's like, I feel like it's kind of like here, there, and everywhere. As much as like social media blows things up, I feel like we need one like centralized sort of like organization where like, not only is it just like we're following a person or a group of people, but we actually get to communicate and share our views. I do a lot of like, when I think about things, I always look back into history, because that obviously tells you a lot about how we should do things now. But then I look at all the like organizations that broke down and how they broke down. It was always a divide and conquer, or it was always like, I don't know, people didn't agree, so then people split off into different factions. So I feel like even if we did start an organization, we got to look into things that ensure that we don't split up, that we don't listen to you know, other people trying to infiltrate the movement, like stuff like that. Like, we got to look at that. But I think definitely organization, so that when we all say, oh, should we boycott this, we're all like, okay, we've heard it. Like, we're all hearing it from maybe one page or one person or whatever it is. Like, we can even get like a kind of person, you know what I mean? Like, someone who we don't really, like, no one can really catch. But yeah, like, I feel like we just need like one thing where we can all hear it and all be like, okay, I agree with this, let's do this, and that's what we do. Whereas it's like, right now, it's like, show up to this, and it's like, I kind of want us to all be on one page, which is sad, because the unity thing is not something that we're all very good with. But I just
that is true. Everybody is saying the same thing, but everybody's also trying to grab the mic and say this exact same thing.
But might go around.
Exactly.